Having used the Pixel 4, more specifically the XL model, on and off as my daily smartphone for the past 6 months, I feel I know the device better than at any other point. And I feel I have enough extended experience to give you my thoughts after living with this fantastic but still somewhat flawed smartphone. Thanks for watching 9 to 5 Google on YouTube. Remember to thumbs up, hit subscribe and enable notifications with the bell icon to be among the first to watch our upcoming videos. So the design of the Pixel 4L is pretty simple. Simple in a way that I think differentiates it from the crowd of shiny slabs with endless displays and tiny bezels. Now I'm still a huge fan of the expansive screen to interact with, but in all honesty they don't tend to match the comfort and approachability of the Pixel 4 in my opinion. Having matte black side bezels is certainly striking, and I found they actually aid grip, which is sorely missing on some similar flagships with small bezels. Matte glass, well, I like this. We need more matte colours across the smartphone industry. Had Google made a matte black Pixel 4 though, I would have been first in line for the more stealthy colour. I've also been pleasantly surprised with the overall durability of my Pixel 4 XL. It has taken a few minor dings from drops, but it has held up really well. Granted that of course is anecdotal, as no two drops are equal. Some scuffs to the bezels haven't really done much to destroy the look of the phone either, so that's another massive bonus. With a 6.3 inch body, I wouldn't personally call the Pixel 4 XL small. It does however feel smaller than some comparable flagships. Of course the smaller Pixel 4 is a tough sell because of the paltry battery, but it's far more palatable at 5.79 inches if you do want a smaller smartphone. That said, we don't recommend the standard Pixel 4 model unless you simply must have a smaller phone. The Qualcomm Snapdragon 855 chipset and 6GB of RAM do seem particularly modest given the pricing, but I still don't think a Pixel is a Pixel because of the internals. The Pixel 3a is a prime example of that, although I do kind of regret opting for the 64GB model, bearing in mind that I have at no point utilised more than 50GB thanks to a 100GB Google One subscription plan that lets me hand off larger files without worrying about storage. So if I were you, I would maybe think about doing so if you do have the smaller storage option. The display on the Pixel 4 XL is superb, but it doesn't quite get bright enough in direct sunlight. Luckily that isn't something to complain about for myself exactly, as I live in dreary England, but it is something to note if you do live in a sunny country. Indoors has been absolutely fine though throughout my time with it. It still has fantastic colours, with the natural mode being particularly nice on your eyes. I haven't personally encountered the display oleophobic coating issues that some have complained of. In that case I did slap a screen protector on just so I wouldn't have the issue or have a pain point in future. It might be wise to do the same unless you're happy wiping smudges and grime off your screen quite frequently. The big forehead on that display really hasn't detracted from the experience in my opinion, and I have to admit that I'm more of a fan of this look than a cutout simply from a uniform perspective. That said, it would have been nice to get an edge-to-edge experience or more consistent bezels on all sides of the Pixel 4 XL's display. It's also worth mentioning that the Pixel 4 does have a completely flat display, so not having curves makes it easier to interact with daily. You'll have no issues with phantom touches at the edges or on the curves because Google did the right thing and made this completely flat. Arguably the Pixel 4 XL's greatest strength alongside the camera is the pure Android software experience. It's still fantastic now 6 months on, thanks to a series of updates that resolve some of the nagging issues. One of the biggest bonus additions though to the entire Pixel series this year has been the introduction of the Pixel feature drop. Quarterly feature additions that enhance the experience by giving supported hardware extra functionality and improving the original out-of-box experience in the process. When running Android 10, I had no issues with slowdowns or app crashes. Now that I'm running the notoriously buggy Android 11 developer previews, I have seen some problems, but to be able to run the latest unreleased builds ahead of a full OS upgrade later this year is still pretty fantastic. If you simply must have the latest updates on your phone beyond Apple, then the Google Pixel series is still the only way to go on Android. Should you stick with the stable Android 10 builds, the aforementioned Pixel feature drops give you plenty of Android 11 developer preview features for a fully rounded experience. And of course this is one phone that runs just as well after 6 months of daily use and abuse as it did as a fresh device on launch day, something that not many other Android devices can claim. It's with regret that I have to tell you again about the battery woes on the Pixel 4 XL. On average I'll see around 3 to 4 hours of screen on time with normal usage. That means plenty of WhatsApp, Slack messaging, emails and Pocket Casts abuse. That is probably fine for most people, but it just isn't consistent enough on a daily basis to be an exact figure. Although that said, screen on time is a particularly poor metric in that regard. That said, as soon as I deviate from this regular usage, battery anxiety becomes almost too hard to bear. Watching your battery percentage dropping in almost real time when doing almost anything deemed power intensive is not something I miss when switching to a device with a substantial battery. What's more confusing is that some smartphones with only slightly larger batteries actually fare so much better. The OnePlus 7T is a prime example, as it has a 3800 mAh battery compared to the 3700 cell in the Pixel 4 XL. And it can still manage to get through a full day, whereas the Pixel 4 XL sometimes struggles quite substantially. We're not entirely sure, but this could be something to do with the Pixel 4's battery optimization. But even with extra features like motion sense disabled, it still fares poorly. Plus, you shouldn't have to disable core selling features just to make it through an average day. On top of that annoyance, the standby time is by far the worst of any modern smartphone I've ever used. Leaving overnight, it can lose as much as 20% of battery, even with Do Not Disturb mode enabled, and that is actually pretty terrible in practice. Although anecdotally, software updates appear to have made a minor difference to battery life, but if I'm heading out for a long day, not too common at the present due to COVID-19, I always ensure I have a power bank on hand to give me a little extra juice. Feeling tied to a charger is not something I've had with the Pixel 3 or 3a XL, so let's hope the Pixel 5 can resolve this come release. In terms of camera, the beauty of the Pixel 4 XL is that you can just take it out of your pocket, snap the shutter button, and 9 times out of 10 you're guaranteed a great photo. In my opinion, it's simply the most enjoyable smartphone camera experience on the market. Sure, of course, there are plenty of smartphones that have better hardware, but there is a reason that we see people rushing to download Google camera ports on their devices. Google's special sauce, of course, is in the processing, and there's no denying that this is the best of the bunch. Some of the initial images I took within the first few weeks of purchasing the Pixel 4 XL are among the favourites I've ever taken. It always feels like I'm going to nail a shot before I even contemplate taking it. It's quite tough to describe, and I must admit, this is the best camera experience on the market. To me, the consistency is simply unmatched for simple point-and-shoot smartphone photography. When I'm carrying the Pixel 4, I actually feel excited to take photos. Something that no other smartphone seems to offer is the same desire and excitement when taken out of my pocket. I have missed the ultra-wide-angle lens, but it's not a lens I use all too often. Although I am not defending the omission, Google should really ensure that we have the ultra-wide option on the Pixel 5. Being able to get that wide shot is something I have missed the most when doing touristy things. The telephoto zoom lens though is fantastic, even though it is mainly handled by software. Super Res zoom enhances images exceptionally, but image quality does start to fall apart at 8x zoom. It's definitely bettered by a growing list of smartphones packing in optical zooms, but the Pixel 4 XL hangs up with them to a point. On top of that, when it gets dark, night sight does a sublime job. It's no longer the class leader as the Huawei P30 Pro, P40 Pro and even the Oppo Find X2 XL at single shot night exposures, but it does a fine job in poor lighting. I do also like that the basic astrophotography mode is possible, but save the initial few weeks after launch, I've probably used it a grand total of 5 times, so it is a little bit gimmicky. At the front, I'm sorry to say I'm not that much of a prolific selfie taker, but any selfies I have taken have been exceptional. The portrait mode seems to work just as well as it does on the rear-facing dual camera setup too. Those of you who are big-time selfie takers out there might miss the ultra-wide from the Pixel 3 series, but the undoubted quality step-up from the solo front-facing lens won't disappoint. So just a few more little tidbits before we wrap up. In terms of haptics, I think the Pixel 4 XL have only been superseded by the Pixel 4 Pros. You get that nice pleasant clink when you tap and swipe. It's full-bodied and in no way buzzy like cheaper smartphones. Although I would say it is a few steps behind the iPhone. That said, I still love the Pixel 4's haptics. Motion sense, well, it's a nice idea in principle, but motion sense is a bit of a gimmick overall. The added features do make it more useful than it was at launch, but turning it off does save quite a chunk of battery life. I can't say I was looking too forward to losing fingerprint unlocks on the Pixel 4 XL, but Face Unlock is a joy to use. It's still a little fast for my liking, although I guess I prefer it being too fast than too slow. Remember the outrage over the eyes closed unlocking though? Well, the recent March Pixel feature drop has fixed that too. So in summary, the Google Pixel 4 XL is still a fantastic smartphone as it was upon release. However, $899 is still far too high an entry price to ask after 6 months. Luckily though, it has had quite a few discounts and is almost constantly on sale. It still has probably the best smartphone camera, the best Android software and the best update track record. That means if you want the purest Android experience and arguably the best smartphone camera, but can put up with some potentially iffy battery, then look no further. With all of that said though, Pixel 4 owners, I want to hear from you. What do you love, hate, or anything else? Let us know down in the comment section below. But as always, this is Damien with 9to5 Google saying thanks for watching, and I will speak to you later.